Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Life Shift podcast. I am here with Jill. Hello, Jill.
Hello, Matt.
Well, thank you for being very fancy for the Life Shift podcast.
Yes, I'm very fancy. Matt, I put my light on, got my fancy shirt on. For you, my friend, you just get the best version of Jill.
Well, thank you for wanting to be a part of the Life Shift podcast. This, I tell people, and people are probably sick of me saying it, but it really is this healing journey that I never knew that I needed personally. And it's been so beautiful to talk to almost 200 people now about these life shift moments, realizing full well that we have lots of life shifts in our lives and there's lots of pivot points. And, normally we kind of identify this most pivotal moment in our lives where from one moment to the next, everything was different. And sometimes that's an external force. Sometimes that's an internal fire of some sort. For me, when I was 8, my dad had to sit me down and tell me that my mom had been killed in a motorcycle accident. And it was at that moment when he told me that everything that we had ever planned for my life was not going to be what we planned, right? Everything was gone. That version that we had dreamed about was gone. And this was like late 80s, early 90s. People weren't talking about grief. My father sure didn't know, like he was in his mid 30s. He didn't have the toolkit to like help an 8-year-old to move through this. And so I assumed that everyone needed to see that I was perfect. So I just pushed away grief for about 20 years and kind of had a mess of a grief journey. But along the way, I wondered, do other people have like these significant line in the sand type moments in which everything is different? And so here I am on this journey of talking to people about all different kinds of moments in which everything changed. And what I found, even though our stories are so wildly different, that as humans, we have so many of the same feelings around them, emotion, like all the things feel very, very similar. So that old adage of people saying, like we have a lot more in common than we have that sets us apart is like so true, even though our experiences are so wildly different.
Yeah.
So thank
Yeah,
you for just coming on this journey with me in this way.
absolutely. And the motorcycle accident, can I ask you a question? Was
Sure.
your mom riding a motorcycle?
She was a passenger. She
She was
was
a
with her
passenger.
boyfriend. Yeah.
Okay. So she was riding on a motorcycle. So just something about your mother's spirit. She sounds just like she loved to live life to the fullest and she loved adventure. And I just sounds like your mom was an amazing human.
Well, thank you for that. I think so. I think she was leaning into that period of her life. She was pretty sheltered growing up, and she was 32 at the time, and she was kind of starting to dip her toe in adventure. And this was their second time going across country with a bunch of other people on motorcycles. These upright, they weren't like the super
Yeah, yeah,
speedy
yeah.
ones or anything like
Yeah.
that. And yeah, they just happened to have a single vehicle accident, and the rest is really history. But because of that, I've learned so much about myself, and I've learned, how not to grieve. And then I learned how to grieve, like when my grandmother got sick. And so, we look back at these moments that are sometimes really hard, and there happen to be good things that can come from these really hard moments. And it's really hard to say out loud sometimes, right? Because it seems like you should never say that. But I've learned that all the feelings are okay.
Yeah, exactly. And as you say, like sometimes things happen to us externally, and it's not that we ever want these things to happen, but we have a choice in that moment. Like, how are we going to move forward? What can we learn from this? Right. So sometimes the shift happens, or we might say shit happens, right? The shift happens. And other times, like we need to make the decision to initiate the shift, like make shifts happen, especially if you're kind of in a rut or if you're feeling like life is okay or not exactly what you imagine, then you've got to initiate the shift to make your life better and what you want it to be. Mm-hmm.
You know what? And I think it's challenging. I think that that is a very active process. I think that's something that you also have to be super self aware and understand how you react. This is my opinion here. But talking to so many people, especially people like in my generation, we grew up very much on this checklist kind of life in which you graduate high school, then you got to go to a good college, and then you got to graduate college and you get a good job, get promoted, like it just felt like I'm just doing all the things, and finding happiness is like maybe the next check mark, like you're not sure where that's going to be. So yeah, definitely need to make things happen.
Yeah, totally. And as you just mentioned that, like this is when these things happen to us and we have this choice, like it's not easy, but we can choose to try to be optimistic about a bright future instead of pessimistic. And I just happened to study under Marty Seligman. He's the father of positive psychology at UPenn, and he has a book called Learned Optimism. And a lot of his research was on that. And it was just so interesting to learn that so many people, when bad things happen, he calls it their explanatory style. Like if something bad happens, like what is the story we tell ourselves? Like this is the worst thing ever. It's gonna never change. The sky is falling. It's gonna ruin everything, and I can't have a good future. So we take the bad thing and we are pessimistic and we don't believe that we can have this positive future versus we can actually learn. And this is all of my psychology. So sorry, I'm going to be throwing a lot of psychology at you, but what he's learned is people can learn to be optimistic. Now, this is not Pollyanna. This is not pretending like, oh, my mother just passed away. Everything's fine. Now that ignoring our negative emotions is not healthy, but it's being a realist and recognizing what adversity has struck, but then also being optimistic that you can have this great future. So just being able to see or to learn how to be optimistic is the first step. And that is one of the things that makes us resilient, right? When something bad happens, like, do we have more of that pessimistic, like nothing will ever change, it's all my fault and it's going to ruin everything? Or am I like, this really, really is horrible. However, I believe that I will be able to overcome this and I can have a positive, happy future. So that belief right there, it's so predictive of future happiness and well-being. And that's what triggered me when you said happiness. I mean, Marty Seligman started the field of study, which is the science of happiness and well-being, positive psychology. And some of his groundbreaking research on that is pretty fascinating. We can learn to do that.
We can. Yeah. And I think, like I said, that awareness piece for me is very much a toolbox kind of thing. At 8 years old, I didn't have it. Nobody was modeling that. I didn't know how to do that. It was time period as well. So all of those things, I completely agree. And I know that I didn't do that because I didn't know how. Maybe if I knew how, or maybe if that was existing in my world, I probably would have had a different life and we wouldn't be talking right now. But, let's talk more about your story. Maybe before we get into your story, 2025, how does Jill identify in the world? Like, who is Jill?
Oh, gosh. Well, recently I think I've had a little shift. So Jill currently is still a little my roots. I'd say 1/3 kind of tough girl. I'm a former Marine Corps officer, so I still have that little edgy, like, kind of brave girl, like tough girl. So 1/3 that, and then 1/3 academic geek because I love research. I love not just understanding what can make our lives better, make things more successful, but I personally feel that we have a responsibility if we're going to be telling people what to do, that it should be based on evidence. So as I talk to audiences, across the country, around the globe, I'm always just dropping in the research because I want people to know that this isn't just my opinion. Jill Marine thinks you should do this. No, what does the empirical evidence tell us? So 1/3, nerd, and then just 1/3, someone who've always been someone in business driving results, as a Marine in corporate America and with my own company. Like I love the science of high performance. So you've got kind of like the psychology, the high performer, and then the Marine. And you kind of put all those three things together, and that's Jill.
Yeah. Well, I also think just from the 18 seconds that I've known you now, there's a really positive like energy as well. Like I feel like you have a really like happy energy. Is that true, or is that you just putting that on for me?
No, I think it's something that is genuinely me. I love people who are positive and optimistic. I know, again, based on the research, that whatever energy we have is contagious and it makes an impact on others. So one of the things that I like to teach too is, I have some days where you wake up and you're exhausted and maybe something happened and you're kind of down. And one of the things that we know based on Barbara Fredrickson's research, she wrote a book called Positivity, is that we can choose to change our emotional state to best serve us, our teams, our families, whoever we are around. So I try to proactively model that and choose, if I'm wake up in kind of the wrong side of bed, I think about what things can I do to try to generate the positive emotions that will best serve me. And these are the things that people don't talk about in corporate America. And I'm trying to talk about them. Like, literally when they study like the either the positive emotions versus the negative emotion has a huge impact on culture, results, productivity. So yeah, thank you for noticing that. I think it comes naturally, but I also intentionally create the positive emotions. So, but yeah, so it radiates.
That's probably a practice, but also like I think that's a good thing, a nugget for people to pick up because, we can wallow in things. And sometimes I do. And I acknowledge it. And I say, this is not forever. And this, I know I have my tools to get through whatever this is. And I kind of move through life back into the normal state.
Yeah.
And,
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
can't win them all, but I try.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, maybe you could kind of paint the picture of your life leading up to the life shift moment that we're going to kind of center things around. And you can go back as far as you need to kind of paint the picture of who Jill was before that.
Yeah. I think the first big shift in my life is I grew up in Minnesota in the Midwest. I had a pretty normal childhood. But I knew I wanted a shift. I wanted something different or more. Like my father still lives to this day in the same little tiny town I grew up in, Prior Lake, Minnesota. And for him, that's what he wants, right? And a lot of people, sometimes we call them like townies. They love to stay in the little hometown, right? For me, I wanted to kind of spread my wings. So that's where I decided to pursue a career in the Marine Corps. So I ended up competing for and being awarded a 4-year scholarship on the Marine Corps. So I would go to college first, they'd pay for it, and then I'd become a United States Marine. So that was a big shift. And I got to tell you I got to paint the picture because that sounds like, oh, that just sounds like such a wonderful transition. I'm sure it was really easy, but it wasn't. I got on a plane in Minnesota to head to San Diego. I was going to school at the University of San Diego, so in Southern California. And I was really, really a little nervous about reporting in because I didn't really know anyone in the military. And I was reporting into not just college, but it was to the military unit, right? To the ROTC unit, Reserve Officer Training Corps, and the Marine Corps option. And I wanted to look professional, and it was hot in the summer. So I'm like, what do you wear? I mean, this is such a girly thing to say, but I chose a very professional looking outfit. It was these silk shorts. And back in these days, it was like the pleated pants that kind of went down to almost to the knees, and they were hot pink with white polka dots. And then, and then there was a shirt that was matching, and then the collar matched there. And then I didn't want to wear super high heels because that would look a little too girly. So I wore like little pumps, thought that was the perfect choice. And I had the perfectly manicured nails in the perfect shade to match. That was me reporting into my ROTC unit with Marines. Now imagine that. Now imagine anything you've seen in the movies about a screaming drill sergeant. And that was the beginning of my journey, my shift. And it wasn't pretty. I had someone the first day tell me, you will never make it as a Marine. And he was absolutely confident that he's like, you will never make it as a Marine. And in those moments, you've got to make that choice. I could have gotten on a plane, went back home, and I could have gone to college in Minnesota around all my loved ones and my family where it would have been easier. Or I could choose to move forward into a path that I know would be arduous, full of ups and downs, and it wouldn't be easy. And, so that was really my first, choice or my shift. And obviously because I became a Marine, the story is I kept going and I was horrible in terms of my physical fitness the first couple of years. Like I thought I was in shape. Like I played tennis. I was a cheerleader. I was a swimmer. So I'm like, I'm in great shape. Right. And then you start running the hills of Southern California at the pace that male Marines do. I was pretty pitiful. I couldn't climb a rope or anything, but I stuck with it. 3 years after I first reported in, that 3 years later, when I went to officer candidate school, I finished as the top, officer candidate from my school. So it was quite a story that I'm proud at the end, but it was not a pretty journey. It was hard.
Sometimes the really nice journeys are hard. Like you have to challenge yourself. Why did you choose that? Was it because you could go to college or were you like just really interested in the Marine Corps?
It was more of I think two things. I really wanted something that was meaningful, right? I think both of my parents had jobs and the jobs earned a paycheck and the meaning of their jobs was I need to get paid to support the family, but they didn't really enjoy their work. So in a good way, what I learned from my parents is I'm like, I want to pursue a career that I think really matters or is more intrinsically motivating. And then the other thing is I just really wanted to be able to spread my wings and
Get out
go
of Dodge.
get out of Dodge and live a bigger life. And I thought I wanted to go to the academy route, but then I really wanted to have fun in college, which is code for I wanted to party in college. And then you can't really do that as much. You can't really do that in the academy. So when I learned you can get this full ROTC scholarship, that was, I decided to go that route. And I figured, like, what the heck? Like, let's try it. And I chose the Marine Corps. People ask me that, well, like, why'd you choose the Marine Corps? And I'm like, duh. It's kind of known as the few, the proud, right? So I was definitely attracted to the Marine Corps. I wanted Marine Corps or as my top one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so it kind of, you wanted to somewhat escape this little tiny town. And was there anything to escape, or was it just like, it's too small? Like, I got to get out of here. I got to
Yeah, you
bust
know
out.
what? I think the one thing that is relevant, and when I applied for the scholarship, I didn't know, but this is the time where my mom and dad had just split up and were getting divorced. So, like, when I was coming home, it wasn't like I'm coming home to this like loving home. There was actually a lot of kind of chaos and unhappiness. And again, I didn't know that when I applied, but I was trying to get out of what I saw as a little bit of a small town. Like, I don't want to offend anyone that still lives in Prior Lake, because for some people, like, that's their dream to live in the same town that they've always, but for me, I just wanted to experience more in life. So I wanted something more. There just wasn't really any desire for me to ever go back. Like, I loved my experiences. I loved growing up in Minnesota, but I really, didn't want to spend the rest of my life and career there.
Yeah, I think sometimes we see the people around us, and as much as they are loving what they're living and doing, you're like, I also can see how easy it would be to get stuck here.
Mm-hmm.
And because it is so comfortable, because everything is so routine, it's just so easy to stay in that little nice flow of the river, right? But sometimes we're like, and then when you're young, you probably have all this energy too. And I would imagine that a small town is kind of socially isolating in its own way.
Yeah, totally. And one of the things you're making me think about too is, like, if we're talking about life shifts and you really think about what kind of a life do I really want? Like, what is missing now? And if I were to dream about the life I want, what does that look like? Right. You know, you really need to figure out, like, who has made the shift or who's doing or living the life that you want to live. And then it makes sense to surround yourself with those kind of people, right? So if you surround yourself with the same people you've always surrounded yourself with for your whole life, and you want to shift, and that's, the people who love you the most might give you advice of, like, don't make a change. Oh, don't take a risk. Don't do that, because they love you and they want you to stay safe. So they don't want you to make a change and they want to keep you close. So when you do want to make that shift, you've got to identify those people and then make those people your network of people to encourage you to keep going or to give you advice on how to be successful. So I really believe in, finding people that can support your journey. And usually they're not the people that you currently hang out with. So we don't need to fire our friends. Like, we love our family members and our friends we've had together. But if you want to make this shift, you've got to develop relationships. And it takes bravery to, like, approach people that maybe intimidate you because they're doing what you want to do. And then forming a relationship and asking for help. Like, this takes bravery. Like, I don't really know what I'm doing. Will you help me? Right. Or
Did you have people when you were like 17 that, like, in your space that were like, dream big, girl? Or did you have people that were like, don't go, it's scary out there?
I didn't really have anyone. I had this internal desire. If anything, my parents are like, why do you want to do this? Like, so I don't know really where I get asked that a lot. And I don't really know. The only thing I can think of, though, Matt, is my neighbor across the street. She had a cousin who went to the Air Force Academy, I believe. And I remember hearing the stories of it. So sometimes you just hear a story. And so that is a story that stuck with me, that wanted me to pursue it. So I think I had one conversation with them, like, as I was applying, just to go, what is it like to go into one of the academies? But it was even just the story of, like, oh, that's a future life. You're serving your country, you're in the military, you're flying out of, Minnesota. That was just the story that
Yeah.
inspired me.
Well, it kind of plants a seed. It gives you possibility, right? It gives you that there's permission to do things other than what you're doing. I think for me, it was like, And I think this might have been trauma informed, but like I didn't feel like there were too many choices when I was going through high school. It was like the next thing I need to do is I need to go to college and I need to do the thing that I can get the best grades and get the best job from, so that a lot of it was I was afraid my dad was going to abandon me, just planted in my head. He wasn't going to. I don't think he would have. But it was like, if I'm not perfect, he's going to leave. So everything I did felt like very much like I just didn't have a dream. I didn't have a dream for any kind of job or
Yeah.
anything like that. It was very narrow. So that's where those questions are coming from, is like I wouldn't have I wouldn't have felt like I could dream about something big because it wasn't on
Yeah.
this map.
Right. Oh my gosh. And if we can't dream about a future that is motivating and inspiring, then that's kind of a recipe for not a real healthy mental state if you don't have something to look forward to, right? And strive for.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but were the people around you, like classmates and stuff, were they more of your mentality, like I'm getting out of here, I'm going to do something big, or did you have the people around you that were more like I described myself?
I would say, I think now I'm aging myself here because it's a long time ago, but I don't really remember. I think most of the kids that I was surrounded with were all going to pretty much local colleges, right? So I was definitely, I think part of it too is I don't, my high school experience, like I was kind of a nerd, I didn't, I had a good experience. Like I had a good academic experience. I was in a lot of sports, but I wasn't popular. I wasn't cool. I wasn't popular. You know, I don't know. I just had kind of a blah experience, right? So I think that's part of the reason why I just want to be like, all right, maybe I didn't peak in high school, which was maybe good. Like, but I want to go out and have an adventure and do something different. I don't
Yeah,
know.
no, I think it's beautiful. I just so curious because it's not my experience, and the people around me, we all kind of just like, there were some people that like really went out and did what kind of things that you did. So I love that. I also love that you showed up fancy on day one and you were told, no way,
Yeah.
this is not going to be your thing, girl. Is that something that lit a fire in you? Like, I'll show you, or
Yeah.
were you like, oh shit, I should go home?
It did. I mean, in that moment, it was really obviously hard to hear because the gentleman who told me that is someone I just really looked up to. So it was really hard to hear. But if you tell me that I can't do something, it does. It lights a fire. And I really wanted to prove him wrong. So in the moment, I thought it was so devastating. This is where you can look back and go, I am so happy he said that on day one because there's so many times that I wanted to quit, especially that first year, because there was two females that were in the unit. The other girl quit my freshman year. So then I was the only one standing. I was the last girl standing. So there's a lot of times where I wanted to quit. And the reason I didn't is because that was like haunting me. And I'm like, no, I've got to prove him wrong. So we can look at this retrospectively and I can say, I'm so glad he told me that on day one, because maybe that's the fire that got me through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you, as you moved through and were achieving things, were you were you were you trying to impress him? Was he always part of the
I had
bubble?
this dream that after I was commissioned and I had my bars and I earned the title of Marine, that I'd run into him someday, like as we're both active duty, like out on a ship or like whatever. And I would see him and I would be able to like, snap a, moment never happened.
No. Did you encounter him throughout that, or was that just
Never.
that one day and it was just like right place, right time?
He was,
Unfortunate words, but
he was in his final year
okay.
when I was a freshman. And I was a mess that whole year. So the whole year he was probably thinking, this girl's never going to make it. This girl's going to never make it. So he went on, but no, I never saw him again. So this is, I wonder if he even has any idea what an impact he had on me. He probably doesn't, right? I mean, he was probably just being like, oh, I'm get to be like a drill sergeant and all that. But he had a very positive impact because I got through it, I think, because of that little comment. So, and this is one of the things, like when things like this happen to us, we have a choice, right? Like, are we going to believe it and are we going to let it be the self-limiting belief, or are we going to let that motivate us to drive us moving forward? Right. And I now know psychologically we can take things that happen, like even someone telling you can't do it, and you can try to see the truth and your optimistic future. And I think I just did that naturally back then and just kind of told them like, I'm going to prove them wrong. But, sometimes these things can, if someone says they're not very good, they believe it. And then that ends up becoming like the career limiting or, which is so sad. So we've got to learn to I'm really passionate about just agency, in life, or you can control your happiness, your well-being, your success in life. And that's really what all my research is about bravery. Is take the wheel in life and decide where you want to go. Do not let life happen to you. Like, decide what you want to have happen in your life. And when people realize that they can create the life that they want, it's so empowering. It's so inspiring. And it's the truth. You can.
Part of me wonders, if I had heard that, I probably would have fought like you did, but I wonder what my motivation would have been. Would my motivation have been, no, I want to achieve this because this is what I want? Or would my motivation be, no, I'm going to prove that guy wrong? Did you have those conflicting thoughts, or did you know, like, this is my dream and I'm going to do it, and the byproduct is proving him wrong, or the other way?
I think I had the goal, and part of it was college was going to be covered for 4 years. So free college and a guaranteed job was the goal. And I still want to do that. I also had a grandfather who was a United States Marine. And he fought in World War II. So a little part of me from the family legacy, I really wanted to do it. But my primary motivation is I wanted to get my degree, serve my country. And then what this senior midshipman said to me was it was a little bit of that motivation that kept me going through all 4 years.
Yeah, a little fire. Keep that fire going.
Yeah.
What did you learn most about yourself? Because it sounds like you went in kind of spunky, but like in a good way. That's a good compliment.
I think this is one of the lessons everyone needs to learn, which is what I learned about myself is it was really hard, and there were so many like low moments, and I struggled and struggled and struggled. And that is normal on your path for developing any skill. Anytime you set an ambitious goal for you that's uncomfortable, that takes bravery to say, I want to achieve that, and you start moving toward it. What I learned is the path to achieve that is not going to just be sunshine and rainbows. This is what I thought. I'm like, I'm going to get there, and they're going to roll out the red carpet, and it's going to be sunshine and rainbows. Especially because it is San Diego. I mean, I grew up in Minnesota.
Yeah, exactly.
Like thinking like literally the campus of USD, one of the most beautiful campuses. It's small, private, like Catholic school. And you can see the ocean it's just absolutely gorgeous. Yeah. But that journey between where you are now and that ambitious, challenging, scary goal that requires bravery, it is not going to be just a linear line of just like, I'm going to keep working. It's just going to be there. There's going to be ups and downs and turns and adversity along the way. And the choice to get through those tough times and to endure and to keep showing up, that is what separates the people who achieve the greatest things in life and the people that don't. A lot of people, encounter some adversity and says, see, it doesn't work. It's learning that the greater the challenges and adversity, and if it's a really wild ride and you stay on and you keep going, that leads to not just the success at the top of just saying I achieved it, but it's who you become in the journey. And it's the increase in your self-confidence, in your self-efficacy, of fighting through and working really hard. So I want to just relate it back to now the research that I know, which is growth mindset. Carol Dweck's work from Stanford of, some people believe in fixed mindsets like, oh, I'm not marine material, I could never be a Marine, right? Versus saying I'm not marine material yet. It's going to take a lot of hard work and effort, but I can do anything I want. It's going to require a lot of effort, persistence, et cetera. So that's really what I learned about myself is that lesson that the greater the challenges and adversity, the greater the reward on the other side. And it's not just the accomplishment, it's who you become in the journey. That's what I learned.
I think I could go two ways here. First, I want to know, this is really low of me. What was a moment where you wanted to quit? Like why, where were you when you were close to like, I don't know about this? Because I think we all have those moments and sometimes we give in.
Yeah, we give in. Yeah. It was like the first year, two things that happened. So the first year as a Marine, one of the most important factors to be successful as a Marine is not just, knowing how to be a great Marine, but physical fitness is a huge part of it. And when I couldn't keep up in the runs, like anyone knows, one of the most shameful things as a Marine is if you can't keep up in runs, called falling back. So everyone is like running in formation. And if you can't keep pace and you start creating a gap, and then eventually people just have to go around you. So you're the one like running, jogging behind or walking. Like there is nothing more shameful. And that was me. And so I felt like this guilt or this shame, right? And so those are the moments, and especially when the other woman, quit. And then at the same time, like things at home were not well. And my dad really kind of needed my support. And I was thinking like, maybe I should just go home. My dad needs my support. This is not working. The first full year, I still couldn't keep up in runs. Right. And those are the moments where, I said, am I cut out for this? Should I just go back home? I got a year of school for free. So those are some real moments of looking in the mirror, because you want to be good at what you do. And I wasn't good at it yet. But now in retrospect, I'm so glad that I stayed. At this point, when I look back right now, I'm glad I was such a pitiful case in the beginning and not really strong, because I think I got more out of the experience and growing and overcoming than some of the people that came in. That there's a couple guys that were in my class and they were already like cross country runners. They were cross country running stars from their high schools. So when they came in, the physical aspect, like they didn't have to overcome as much. Right. And they've gone on to have very successful careers in the Marine Corps as well. But now that I look back on it though, it's the fact that I decided to keep going. And I actually walked into the ROTC unit at one point. I haven't ever shared this before on a podcast, but I went in to quit. And I told him, I said, I can't do this. My grades weren't great my second semester because the divorce was really impacting my dad in a low way, and he really needed me. And so I just told him, I can't do this, because after your freshman year in ROTC and Naval ROTC, you have to basically go active duty and deploy over the summer. And I'm like, I just need to go home. I felt like I need to take care of my dad. So I just went in and said, hey, I can't do this deployment over the summer. I did need to go home to be with my dad, to help him. And what surprised me is such great empathy and understanding from my commanding officer. You'd think they'd be like, you can't take it. You can't cut it. All right, we're just going to let you go. But they were the most understanding. And they said, as an organization, if you're going through something hard personally, we want to be there for you. So they gave me resources for myself and my dad, allowed me to not go on that first deployment, to take care of my family and come back so I could be ready to train again when I came back. And so the march into the commanding officer's office to say, I need to walk away, didn't go the way I thought it would be. I thought they would just accept it. And he's like, no, we're not going to accept it. You belong here. You are going to be great. And if you've got some things that you're working through, we're going to support you. So I'm so thankful to that first commanding officer of believing me. And this is where you want to surround yourself with people that are going to not just say, yeah, go ahead and quit, but you want to surround yourself with people that are going to call forth your best and say, keep going. So that was a moment I did try and quit, but they didn't let me. They said, I believe in you. And that helped me believe in myself.
Well, I mean, I think that's beautiful. You have these two fires and just these two moments where the dichotomy could not be like, I mean, it's just like, you can't do it. You're like, yes, I can. And then you're like, I can't do it. And they're like, yes, you can. And it's just like this beautiful, it's kind of these beautiful markers of showing that things are not linear, right? And we have feelings. And part of the thing that I think listeners can get from that story is more, you were really advocating for yourself at that moment. Although you were thinking, I'm going to quit, you were like going to talk to someone to say, look, I got to get out of here. Here's what's going on. You could have just said, I quit. I'm not giving you a reason, but you're like, here's my story. Here's what's happening. And you gave the vulnerability and the ability for other people to show up for you.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't do that. We don't share the story around whatever decision we're making. And we're missing out on the opportunity, or other people are missing out on the opportunity to show that empathy or to show you that they can support you through hard times. So, I mean, I love that part of the story. I love that you decide to share it, because I think a lot of people can relate to those moments of like, this is hard.
This is
Like life
hard.
is hard.
Life is
It's not
hard.
even, it's not even just the Marines. It's like life can be hard and you just want to quit at certain things.
And asking for help and support that you need is a strength, and it requires bravery. So in my research, I've got like the 3 things, like evidence-based practices that helps you build more bravery to pursue those things that you want. And one of them is brave relationships. So it wasn't until you asked me this that I connected with that experience, right? With what it shows in the research. But if you if you have a goal of something that's really challenging, there will be ups and downs. And if you want to be able to get through those times, you have to be able to develop these brave relationships where you're not only connecting with people who have done what you want to do, but then you have to go and you've got to be vulnerable. And so many times when I'm speaking to audiences, there's some people in the audience that look outwardly very brave. Like I have a lot of friends who are, former military, or, a lot of friends that are law enforcement, and they're all like, oh, I'm just super brave. And then I have them take my bravery assessment, right? And we talk about different types of bravery. One being, are you brave enough to admit when you're stuck and you need help? That's where I'm like, you're not so brave, are you? You're not so brave, are you? So we can work on that. And then, and it's so empowering when they realize, like, wait, I'm not supposed to always just pretend like everything's okay. Like, oh, everything's perfect, everything's successful. Like, no, like if you're struggling with overcoming a challenge, or you don't, I use the analogy of just climbing a mountain. If you're going to climb a mountain, right? Let's say someone wants to eventually climb Mount Everest. Are you just going to figure it out on your own? Or are you going to ask some people who've climbed Mount Everest? Are you going to surround yourself with people so that you can avoid the pitfalls, right? And you can make sure that you get up there. Like, it is absolute stupidity to pretend like everything's okay when you're struggling. We need to be brave enough to be asking for help. And that's a key. That's something that differentiates the highest performers from the people who are mediocre.
Nobody wants to know it all.
Exactly.
Right.
You think you're just so perfect? Yeah.
Right. And then you just know that they don't actually know it all because they're just trying to mask whatever they're insecure about. So it just becomes self-fulfilling prophecy there. No, I mean, I think it's a really important part of your story.
And sometimes it's being super vulnerable and maybe breaking down and saying I'm really struggling. Or it can be like little things where it's just like I've got a project at work and I'm a little unsure on what to do. It could just simply be saying like, hey, Matt, I'm now the project leader for this and I'm new at this and I've never really encountered this challenge before. I'm a little unsure on what I should do. Can you give me some advice, or can I run my idea? It doesn't always have to be like super emotional. It can be, I don't know what to do, or it could be I'm feeling a certain way, or it could be I've made some mistakes and you have to admit them and learn from them. So like all these different things are in that same like vulnerability, asking for help, asking for support, admitting mistakes. Those are all things that require some bravery instead of just showing up to work and just, people say fake it till you make it, like just pretend like everything's okay. No, please don't do that. It's going to take you so much longer to achieve something if you just push all those feelings aside and you pretend everything's okay. Ask for the help. It speeds everything up.
Yeah. Well, thinking back to that moment where you walked in and you were like, I'm going to quit. And then you got surprised by all this help and care and empathy. Like, how did you feel walking? Did you feel re-energized walking out of there? Or was it still like, this is really hard. I still want to quit.
It was more of a shock. It was more of a shock. Like, wow, like this is amazing. Like they still want me. They're going to support me. Right. So I think it was a relief. And then I was able to go back and spend the summer. And then I, showed up for my second year of college and kept training and training. And I was really lucky because in my university, because it was in University of San Diego, we have a couple of Marine bases close by. So we had MCRD San Diego, which is where all recruits go to train. And I was so lucky. We were able to go on base and train a lot, which was really hard because when you're going on base and you're trying to go through an obstacle course and you're trying to like climb ropes, of course, I wasn't good at it, but then it was the norm. I was forced to do it on a regular basis because that's what our unit did. Now, let's fast forward to when I went to officer candidate school. Now, I had been like suffering through that for a couple of years. So when I got to officer candidate school, I could fly through it and I could climb the rope faster than everyone else. A lot of other people showed up because they were at the University of Kansas or something. and they had never seen this stuff before. So yeah, I think the beginning of my sophomore year was kind of like, I got this. And then my confidence was there, and I just dug in. I showed up every day and sometimes you just got to grind. It's the consistency, right?
Did you hit a stride? Did you feel like you hit a stride, or was there always kind of like the bumps?
It probably wasn't until my junior year where I really got in my stride. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
did it feel like right? Like you were sitting in the right spot? Cause like probably those first couple of years felt pretty uncomfortable. Like your pants don't fit, and then now you're like, oh, everything fits.
I think it was the moment where when I finally had the self-belief is when I went so officer candidate school is like kind of like boot camp for officers. So like, there's officers and there's enlisted. So you can just enlist for the Marine Corps and you go to boot camp and you become a Marine. The officer side, you go to college first, but if you can't make it through officer candidate school, you're not going to be able to lead Marines, because officers are, they're the ones that are college educated, and they're the ones that do the strategic planning. They're basically the boss, right? So between your junior and senior year, all of these candidates, these Marine Corps officer candidates, go to officer candidate school, and that's where either you make it or you don't. And most people make it. There's only a couple people that kind of get washed out. But it was that experience when I went there. And again, I wasn't performing that well compared to all my male Marines. I wasn't maybe running as fast or climbing the rope as fast, but there wasn't a lot of females. When I arrived at officer candidate school, I realized how strong I was physically. And they measure everything, your leadership, your accuracy on everything. And I just thrived there. I loved it. I love anything that's hard and competitive. And when I graduated from officer candidate school, my ranking and my scores out of OCS were higher than that of even my male peers. So maybe they could still run faster than me, but because I could keep up with them, I ran faster than the girls. But then other strengths that I had surpassed them. I did better on the academic tests. I could shoot more accurately. I could, all the things that required, a lot of the thought and strategic planning, I did really well. So I think that's when I hit my stride, where I realized I'm like, overall, I'm great at this and I love it. So that's when I hit my stride. It was that's what gave me the boost of confidence.
Kind of makes me think of like when sometimes we're so focused on something really small, and then we take a step back and we see the big picture and we're like, oh, wow, it's all there.
And we fixate on sometimes our weaknesses. So this relates to like, let's recognize what are our natural strengths. Let's leverage those to be successful. Now, if we have a weakness that is preventing us from delivering at work, then we need to work on those so that we're at least at a minimum. But yeah, focusing more on what you have and what your strengths are, that's going to lead to higher levels of self-confidence and work satisfaction, et cetera. So there's another like little tie-in of what the research says about recognizing and leveraging your strengths that I realized. So I finally recognized my strengths, and it's not just all about physical ability. I mean, it's important in the Marine Corps, but it's not everything.
Yeah, no, I love that. And so what happens in between? I know we're like, and now you're just like, you've got this book going, all this research. Like, first of all, where do you keep all that in your head? Because like your head must not have a lot of space in it anymore.
Yeah. This has been so great to kind of take a step, because it's been a long time since I went through all this, but I'm seeing all these like little parallels to what I now like write about and speak about. Right. So thank you. This has been like, I feel like I'm in a therapy. This is great to relate everything. But if I fast forward, so I served for 5 years, a little over 5 years, active duty. I made another shift, and this shift was perhaps even more scary, getting out of the Marine Corps. When you are a service member, if the only thing you know is how to serve and be in the military, getting out and going to the civilian world is actually so scary. So I had to make that shift. What made it a little bit easier is when I got out, there's recruiters that try to place like junior officers getting out. And they told me how great the pharmaceutical industry was. And I'm like, what industry? What is that? And they're like, oh, go into pharmaceutical sales. It's such a great career. And I was very much like, I'm a captain of Marines. I'm above sales and medical. What? And they said in a very nice way, like, okay, hot stuff, like just go practice your interviewing skills. At least that'll benefit. So I'm like, fine. So I interviewed with a couple companies, and the second company that I interviewed with, the hiring manager was a former Marine Corps officer, and it was just meant to be. And then my next 13 and a half, 14 years, I was in the pharmaceutical, biotech, and device industry, and I loved it.
Really?
I fell in love with the science. I had no idea how much I loved it, but I loved learning about the science and then how you can present the evidence to have better outcomes for patients. So I thrived and loved it, and I did very well, and I moved up. And then my last job that I had in the pharmaceutical industry was doing leadership development. So I moved up, and then I loved learning how to lead and getting even better. So that was my last job. And then I made another shift. I decided to start my own leadership development company instead of doing it as a job. So that was another big shift, another scary shift. And so I did that. And that's been 11 years with the company. And then my last shift was deciding to go back to school and study the science of happiness and well-being, because, it's really the most important thing in life, right? So, and now it's on another shift where instead of just doing, delivering leadership development workshops, which I still love doing and my company does, but now I want to really take my research and try to bring it to the larger world so that people realize that anyone can become brave. You just need to know how. And it's not just for Marines or Navy SEALs or firefighters. Like there's like little everyday things we can do to be brave for ourselves, right? So we can go after what we want. There's so many moments that we sometimes can decide to be brave or we can cower. And in those little moments, think of each day, day in and day out, if people have these little moments like, oh, I need to have a hard conversation, right? Like you to choose to be brave or to cower, and maybe it's having the hard conversation. Maybe a week later, it's putting your name in the hat for a position you really want. And you decide to not go for it, to cower versus be brave. And then next week, there's an idea that you have and you're a little nervous about sharing it. And you were about to raise your hand, but you decide not to share it. Like all these little things add up over time. So I call it the bravery effect. That is backed by research too. So I want people to realize like bravery isn't just running into a burning building. It's all these little micro moments, and you're being brave for yourself, right? And if you can learn to do that, it's, I use the analogy as well as everyone knows this, like, when you save for retirement, if you keep consistently doing these things and saving over time, you can have all this wealth at the end. Bravery is like the same way. If you learn how to make these little micro decisions of being brave for yourself versus cowering, those things can add up over time. And the consequence is your career, your success, but it's your happiness and well-being so that you can look back on life and not live a life of regret.
Do you think, well, you probably know because you're all research and you like that stuff, but do you think you have to have success with some of your brave choices in order to be more inclined to move into the next brave choice?
Yes and no. Yes, in the case of we teach people to make brave choices that are the right level of difficulty, right? So if someone says, I want to be a Hollywood actress, or if I want to climb Mount Everest, I wouldn't say, don't try to go for the big movie for the tryouts, or don't try to climb Mount Everest in 2 weeks. It's too big of a challenge now. So you got to find things that are a little bit scary, but realistic. So in that way, I try to teach people like always kind of live on the edge of your comfort zone. Like if things aren't a little bit uncomfortable or you're not a little bit scared, you're probably not challenging yourself enough. So that's the first part of my answer. And the second part of my answer is we learn so much by failing.
Mm-hmm.
And when you fail at something, it's information that can help you be better in the future. And sometimes we can go down a road and we realize like, this is just not me. This line of work is not sparking joy. I don't think this is what I really want. And in that case, you can just say, this is a really good learning experience. And you got to sometimes, go down a wrong road to turn around and go the other way. So we learn from failure. So as long as we're learning from the failure, it's positive.
Sounds like we just need to like rebrand failure, right?
Yeah.
Like, because everyone talks about it, right? Like, I mean, like failure is learning and, like we all know it, like, let's rebrand it so it doesn't feel so icky. The word itself is still icky.
Yeah. And even if you're going down the right path, you're not going to be great out of the gates. You're going to have those little failures. So, failure is kind of a sign that you're trying and that you're learning. Because if you try something and you're perfect at it the first time, first of all, it wasn't challenging enough, right? So yeah, so we need to rebrand failure. Failure is the world's greatest teacher.
Well, if you think about working out, right? Like you're lifting to your muscles' failure. They're tearing, they're ripping so that they can get stronger, and then you do more. So I mean, in its sense, like that's kind of failing. Your muscles are failing at the time, and then they get better because they
Yeah.
failed. So
Yeah.
I just
I
thought of
love
that.
I love that you use that analogy, because the same thing happens actually in our brain. So there's the ACC in the back of our brain. It's, something you can call it the bravery part of the brain. So when you do things that you don't want to do, that you're scared of, or you're uncomfortable that you don't want to do, and when you do it, it's actually just like a muscle. I use that. You don't go in and say, I want to have big biceps. And you go in, you try to lift once and then they're not big and you quit. No, it takes time and effort and lifting to failure. And the same thing happens with bravery. So if you feel like, well, I'm kind of timid, I'm shy, I'm just not a brave person, it's just like saying, like, I'm just not strong and I don't have strong muscles. Like, if you want to build that muscle, you can. And so they've been able to look over time when they do, like, the MRI studies, that part of the brain actually grows over time and it becomes easier to be brave, right? Because now you're like, oh, it's amazing how our brains and our bodies adapt to what we do to it.
It's
So
like muscle memory, I
just
guess.
like muscle. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
in a
amazing.
way. So why are you writing a book? Or I'm sure it's already written, but why a book? Just cuz?
No, the reason I'm writing a book and trying to speak and do all these things is, now that I've discovered this research. So I basically did my capstone at the end of my master's program. So I studied under like Marty Seligman, who is the father of positive psychology. You do a capstone at the end. And the program that I went to, it's called a Master's of Applied Positive Psychology. So it's supposed to be applying it. So when I did my research and specifically landed on bravery, I'm like, this is so needed. So many people I talk to, just they're not living the life they want, or they let fear hold them back from living the life they want or doing what they want to do. And I'm like, okay, there's science behind this. The world needs it. I also had two teenage daughters who always wanted, I think their belief system is, if obstacles are removed and if I choose, and if life is easy, that will be happy. And that is just not true. So when I discovered these things and I realized this is kind of a missing message that's out there, I'm like, I really want to get this message to a larger audience. And really what my company does is I usually teach 25 to 40 people at a time how to be a good leader, right? And I'm like, I can't get this message out to a big enough audience. Like, I feel like I've been called to try to teach people these skills. And in order to do that, writing a book scales it, doing larger keynotes scales it. So it's just really all about scaling the message. Because I mean, so many people who have learned the science and started using the practical tools, it has like transformed their life, right? And again, it's not just accomplishing the thing. Like, I am who I am today because I endured all the things that I had to reach that peak. So it's not even about the accomplishment. It's about who you become on the journey. Pride, self-belief. It's the best stuff ever. So that's the reason I wrote the book, is, hopefully people will read it, pass it along so more people can learn.
The ripple effect is going to be beautiful. If one person, they influence another person. I love it. I love that it wasn't like, I just always want to write a book, but rather I want to get this message out there.
It's
And
the message. It's got to be always about the message. I think some
it's
people
not
write a book to be
always
like, oh, I'm a published author and I just want to be
right.
famous. No, it's about the message. I don't care if people know about Jill Schulman. I want them to read the book, and then I want them to pass the book along to someone
Mm-hmm.
else. Like, if I read an amazing, amazing book that really fundamentally changes me, I tell people, like, read this book. It's so good. So that the job of the book is to, yeah, spread the message.
Are you ready for a silly question?
Sure.
Okay. So it's an impossible question as well. So 2025 Jill, if you could stop Jill walking in those silk shorts and the collared shirt and the nails done and dressed to the nines, walking on your way to enter that office, is there anything you would want to tell her about this journey she's about to go on?
It would probably just be, it's going to be really hard and really miserable. And your ability to stick with it and push through the hard times will be one of your most proud accomplishments. So savor. I was sharing with you earlier. In the Marine Corps, we have this saying, and it's embrace the suck. Now I really believe it. So it really is like when things are really hard, instead of just being down in the dumps, I would give myself the advice is the hardest things that you have to endure will become the life's greatest moments. So in those moments, just remember that. So I'm not having a pity party. I just realize that this too will pass.
Yeah. Do you think she would listen?
I don't know.
Kids these
When you're
days.
18 or 19, I don't know if you listen to anything. Like I'm trying to teach my kids, but I don't know. Like,
Yeah. You know it all too when you're that age. I did, at least.
yeah,
No,
exactly.
it's a silly question, but it's always so interesting. I think back of the 8-year-old me walking into my dad's office, and is there anything I could have said to him? Probably. I probably wouldn't have listened. I probably wouldn't
Yeah.
have heard it. But at the same time, it's just a curious question of like, what would life be like? But I think we all have to go on these journeys in the way that they unfold, because it brings us to where we are now, and brings you to soon.
Mm-hmm.
Around the time of this episode coming out, your book is in the world, and people are going to be reading it, putting things into practice, and then like passing it along. And
Hopefully.
like, that's
Hopefully.
so beautiful, and
Well, and
congratulations to you.
I dedicated the book to like who I really want to read the book are my two daughters. I hope they do. And a lot of it will probably be familiar because they've been hearing me talking about it. But it's kind of funny. Like when I had beta readers read the book, the most common feedback I received is people say like, "Oh my gosh, I need to give this to my son, my daughter, my niece, my nephew, or my business partner." So that the book is written as a parable. It's not a sciencey book, right? Because if you pick up a story, you got to read till the end, and it's just more entertaining. So, I kind of wrote it for that maybe 18-year-old Jill. Like, maybe if I would have had that book, back then, it would have helped. So you kind of think about who you're writing it for, and it's kind of writing it for the younger generation, especially because people are getting a message that the key to happiness and well-being is you just want to be easy on yourself and take more self-care days and just sleep in and do bubble baths and just say that you can't do it and have someone take it away. And it's just not the truth. Like true self-care is you get back up and you try again and you do the hard thing. That is keeping promises to yourself. So self-care isn't what people see on Instagram and TikTok and all that. So that's really kind of the purpose for it, I think, is to really help the younger generation realize I want them to be happy. I want them to have the most fulfilling life. And they have to realize they got to do really hard things and endure the suck. And when they do, they'll live their best life. And
Yeah.
and I know that with scientific certainty.
Yeah,
That's
they
true.
could take a bubble bath every once in a while if they want, while they're doing the
Yes,
hard things.
you're right. I always say like once a week, if you
No, I
take
don't want
some
any,
time
but
away. But at the same time, like if you have a self-care day 5 days in a row, you're just lazy.
although I would sign up for that right about now. No, I agree. I think it's beautiful, and congratulations for your life's work of you building Jill, now becoming something that can be a bigger message to other people. I think that's just so cool, and it must be super fulfilling and scary and all the other things that come
All those
along with
things.
doing new
Another
things,
shift,
right?
another life shift, Matt, my
Exactly.
friend. Yeah.
If people want to find you, find the book, get in your circle, learn more about you, like what's the best way to get in Jill's
Yeah.
orbit?
Yeah. The easiest way is just go to my website, jillschulman.com. The book's available anywhere books are sold, just the Bravery Effect. It'll pop right up. My request, though, is if anyone reads the book, is pass it along to someone that needs it, right? That needs a little bit of that bravery in the world. But yes, that's probably the easy. And then I'm on all social media too. You can follow me on Instagram or Facebook or
Perfect.
LinkedIn or any of those. And what I try to do is give a little message each day, because sometimes we need a little bit of that motivation, right? So each day there's going to be that little message that's going to motivate you to be brave every day in those little micro moments. So that's my commitment to anyone who follows me is usually it takes you about 30 seconds to 60 seconds to like watch it or read it. And that should give you that little bravery edge, that day to make those choices.
Perfect. Well, we'll put those links in the episode description so it's easy for people to find. They don't have to spell things. They don't have to do any of that stuff. Encourage you to get the book. When you get the book, you read the book, pass it along, but also write a review. I know that will help you in that journey. It'll help
Thank you.
other people too, because other people rely on reviews to see what it was
So true.
actually like. So that I'll say, write a review for the Life Shift podcast too while you're at it. Why not? So thank
Exactly.
you, Jill, for going down this road, sharing something you said you've never said on a podcast before. So
I
thank you for
know.
that.
You've got a gift, my friend, of really getting me to reflect. So thank you for like the little walk down memory lane too. That was a blast. Thank you for
Well,
having me.
well, it is my pleasure to have you on this healing journey. You've said things that have now been planted and now will be used in my own life. So thank you for that. Thank you, listeners, for just being a part of this journey. Here we are, almost 200 episodes into this. This might even be episode 200. I don't know how we go through this journey, but congratulations on your book, Jill. And I'm going to say goodbye, and I'll be back next week with a brand new episode.